What's going on, guys? This is Mike with the 1% Mindset Podcast. I hope you guys are doing absolutely amazing. Today we have a special guest. Excuse me, my man Evan. Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I'm extremely excited about this podcast in particular because we get to talk about a space that I don't really talk about much with guests, and it's the e-commerce space and the Bitcoin space. In both spaces you've excelled in, so to speak. So I want to start at the beginning of our journey, really, where we were introduced, and it was we were doing a program. I don't know how many years ago it was at this point, 5, 6 years ago,
Top
maybe
five.
5 years ago. And, we both had the same agenda, right? How can we efficiently and effectively make money online by providing some kind of product and or service to ultimately, create and build wealth, right? And just a disclaimer for the audience, that program in itself didn't work out well, at least not for me. I'm assuming for you as well.
Not amazingly. I mean, I'm in e-commerce.
Yeah. So that was our journey. That was our initial journey, and throughout the process, we were able to remain really good friends. And I want to start in the journey. So you've navigated from that online space, and now you're doing well, one of the things is e-commerce now, right? And
Yeah, yeah. So I no, I was just going to add to that. Yeah, I think when we met, that was for an agency course, and I, at least in my personal experience, like I've had to navigate this online space, and again, I think we had the same base layer goal was to make a income online and escape the rat race or whatever you want to call it, right? And that's kind of was the main goal. And there's a lot of ways to get there online. The agency route has its difficulties, and every model actually has its downsides, right, including e-commerce. Um, but I think that was kind of where our journey started. And yeah, I mean, now I'm just in the e-commerce space and not doing any agency stuff. But I think every course teaches you something, right? And so you can pick those gold nuggets out from each course that you take throughout your career as an entrepreneur, and you kind of just build on it and learn.
what brought you to the e-commerce space then?
So initially, after that course, I was still trying to find my way in on something online, and I came across e-commerce. And a lot of people think, oh, it's great, sell a product, make some money online, and it sounded like a good way to start something new online. And so I just took that opportunity to kind of learn and, failed at a couple of launches that I did early on the early days, but just kept building on it. And actually got some corporate agency experience too. So like a little bit about me and my background. I have an accounting degree, and I used that accounting degree initially out of in corporate and worked for a corporation and really just learned that that wasn't the life for me. And so that's where I started getting into like searching for other ways to make an income online, right? And e-commerce was one of them. And so I was lucky enough to have a mentor, somebody to kind of guide me on that first business. And for me it was a success. I saw some sales coming in. I was actually doing all the packaging myself at home, so I was stuffing everything in packages,
Nice.
sending it out. And you learn a lot from that experience. I actually ended up selling that one in 4 months and making my money and a little bit of money back, nothing crazy, but it showed me that it was possible. And after that, I just wanted to build from there.
So you started your first, you failed a few times, then you found a mentor, you launched a business, and then you're able to sell that business within 4 months. Was that
Yeah,
correct?
that one was like, that
Wow.
was 2015. So it was like pretty early e-commerce days, 2016, early
Okay.
days. And so Facebook ads, a lot easier back then. Now that it's 2021 now, I mean, it's just a different game. And, I had a mentor that was helping me. He was actually like telling me how to do it. And I think I paid him, for 5 sessions. And I was like, at the time, it was a large amount of money for me. It was like, I think $1,000 for 5 sessions. But I was like, if I can just flip this and make some money, and that's exactly what I did in 4 months. I was able to pay that off, and ultimately it was a very good learning experience. It wasn't a lot of money, but it gave me the experience of business, and I was like, wow, you can actually sell online. It's just that it's that excitement you get in that first sale of selling online, like the first dollar you make.
Yeah, absolutely.
It opens up your mind to a whole new world, right?
So when did you? I guess were you still at your corporate job at the time when you did that?
I was, yeah. So like I was still working at the time in corporate. And and I recommend, it's this thing where like I've had the experience of just quitting everything, going full time on something that I haven't had a steady income on. And I did that, I think back in 2014. So I was working a few years and then I was like, I want to go full time on this project. And I had no revenue coming in or anything. And it was just like the cockiness attitude. And you learn really quick, like that could be a tough way of doing things. And my second time around, I try to play it smarter and have some cash flow coming in. And that's one thing I talk to about entrepreneurs, especially e-commerce entrepreneurs, is like, it's okay to bet on yourself, but just do it in a smart way, right? Like don't have zero income, go full time necessarily. Like from my opinion, that's a scary way of doing things. It's better to have an income and you're working, and then also working on a side hustle until it's your full time thing, right? So just a little experience on that, but
Okay.
yeah. What are
So
your thoughts on that?
no, I think that the thing with e-commerce, and and transparency, which is why I love to, you've always been very transparent and open and helpful with me. The thing with e-commerce is, especially if you're trying to get into it full time, there's initial investments, right? You're
Yeah.
going to have to be comfortable losing. You're going to have to be comfortable testing. And I think a scary part, it's definitely a mindset shift, because we can be comfortable, spending hypothetically $100 on brunch or $100 here and lose it. But our tangible return was, man, I had an experience with friends, or, I have this material thing, but we don't think about, or I didn't think about, like, man, I lost $100, man, this doesn't work. Right. So how was that like shift like, what was that experience like for you? Because I'm sure you lost a lot of money early on before you started to gain or figure that out.
It's a good point. I mean, you do have to really have a mindset shift because you're in a learning phase, and this is a learning curve, right? Whatever business you go into online, it's a learning curve. And so you have to be ready to, like you said, lose a little bit of money when it comes to ad spend or testing on Facebook, or getting a mentorship or a course. Like these are things that might look like a loss, like you said, on paper, but they're part of the formula to getting to success, right? It's all building on each other. And that's what I brought up earlier. It's like, yeah, maybe that course that we both took earlier was pretty terrible, but, maybe it wasn't worth the value we paid. It was an expensive course, but we could pick out a couple gold nuggets that we learned and move forward, right? And eat the loss. And I think that's just it's turning your mindset from, this is a failure into like, no, it's just a learning experience. It's something I can build on to be successful, right? It's just falling on your face instead of falling backwards, you're falling forwards.
Mm. So let's get into the juicy part, right? So last year was, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first year, or at least the first time you took a store and you made $1 million in sales, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Well, yeah, it was a little bit more than $1 million, but yeah, we did the 7-figure mark, and that was definitely a milestone that I've been wanting to accomplish, and we got a 2 comma club from ClickFunnels. So yeah, that was a major milestone event. But yeah, it's like once you hit that level though, it's just, there's always more challenges, right? And that's what people don't realize is like, you always have to level up as an entrepreneur. There's no endpoint, right? It's just like, how do I get to that next level? And that's just kind of like, you're only competing against yourself at the end of the day, right? And that's kind of attitude. And if you're not learning and continuing to expand your knowledge, like you're always going to be stuck in that one spot. So it goes back to like, again, reinvesting back in yourself, back into your business, and having a source of cash flow and income so you can do that for a while, so you can have enough momentum where, you can make it a full-time thing, right?
What was that feel? What was that feeling like though? Hitting, I mean, yes, obviously, the prophet, Diddy Mason and Biggie say more money, more problems. But what was that feeling like to hit that 7-figure mark, in sales for the first time? Obviously, there's margins there, but pretty good margins. But what was it like? Because since that was a goal to hit 7 figures in sales for that, like, what was that feeling like for you?
Just the feeling. I mean, the feeling was great because like, it's like you're working for a goal and you hit it, right? And so like in terms of feeling, it was great. But then, that feeling wears off of greatness. And then you're like, it humbles you because, again, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards in business or in life, right? So it's always thinking about the next step forward. And if you're just getting caught up in this goal, it's okay to celebrate. But what was if that's your end goal, then that's fine. But, there's always, you always have to be moving forward in a way, right? And so it was a celebration for a day or two, but then I was just kind of like, where do I go from here? And like, at the end of the day, it didn't like put me in a place of like bliss or happiness. There was always like this next, it's like whenever you reach a goal, there's another goal at the end of the next tunnel.
And the reason why I asked that, because I know a lot of times when people hit goals, right, it's like there's this momentum piece where you get to this goal, then you celebrate. And I don't want to say over celebrate, but sometimes you can celebrate and then, the ball didn't quite make it to the top of the hill. So it starts to roll backwards. And it seems like there's always a level of, sort of I'm looking for, of like you're never complacent, right? It's just like, man, that's cool. I got the 7 figures, in this, and like, what was that always there for you? Did you like celebrate too much and go like, what was that?
I mean, you're making a good point. I think like if you over celebrate achievements and it can distract you from your end goal, right? Because my end goal is not to make 7 figures. Yes, it was a milestone, but it's not necessarily the end goal, right? I mean, a lot of people have terrible 7-figure businesses that the foundations are bad, or like, and like, I'm not in my business had a lot of flaws in it too at 7 figures, right? And so it's all a learning experience. At the end of the day, like, it's just a number, you hit it. And now it's just like, how do I continue to like get better in my industry as an entrepreneur, as in e-commerce? And like, again, that takes more investing in courses. Like, I'm still investing in courses. I'm still trying to better myself because this is just like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to e-commerce.
What is if you don't mind sharing, what is that end goal for you?
I mean, my goals have changed over the years. I mean, for a long time, that was such a big milestone to hit a 7-figure business. If I said 5 years ago, like, that would be something like, it would be hard to believe. Right. But like, now that I've hit it, it's like, now I want to sell a business for 7 figures. Right. And like, and just progression down that line where it's just like, no, now you have more skill sets. Now I can build a better foundational business, or like, I learned so much from that last experience where like, that's where I'm trying to go from it. It's just like continuing my journey down this path. And, that always changes. That looks different every 6 months to a year. Right. But, I'm not afraid to fail. Like, I'll get up a new project and put it in beta. And, if there's proof of concept, I'll keep building it. If not, I scratch it. I build another one. And if you let those thoughts of like failure, like, oh, people will judge me or people will this, I think that's one of the biggest obstacles you get. But a lot of the times that obstacle is yourself, like you're saying. And if you over celebrate, if you over, like, you're missing the point of the long term. Like, what do I want? Why am I in this long term? Is it to set myself free from my 9 to 5? Like, because you don't necessarily need to be doing 7 figures to do that, right? So everyone's goal is different. It's just like, how do you get there? What's the plan of action? And don't let the smaller achievements, you can celebrate them, but don't let them get in the way of the ultimate goal.
So the common saying is, find something you love to do. You'll never have to work a day in your life. And I think it's an interesting concept, and I don't think it's necessarily true personally. For e-commerce, with the success that you've had, that you're continuously having, is it a love for e-commerce? Is it a love for the products you're selling? Is it a love for the process? Like, what is that actual thing for you? And I want to, the reason why I say that is because I remember I was having a conversation, and I think it was an MLM I was joining at the time, maybe a decade ago, and they said, the person doesn't, the owner of Purina is not like obsessed with dog food, he's so for you now, like being an e-commerce person, having multiple stores, or testing out, having success in some, like, what's that actual love point for you? Is it the actual, like, I guess I'll ask that. What is that for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's also, I think, changed over the years. Initially, it was like more about, like, let's replace my income. Let's like, didn't matter for me what the business model online was for a long time. I was just like, I want to not be in corporate America. I want to work for myself. And that was like the main driver. Right. But like, as I got to that goal, like that goal morphed into a bigger goal, maybe not necessarily about money, more like, once you reach a certain amount of success online, then it's more about freedom of time, right? It's just like, more than money now is just like, how can I spend my time? If I can spend my time every day and kind of like the way I want, and like, that doesn't mean I don't work, but it means like at 2 p.m. I could go for a walk or like go to the gym. Like, I can make my schedule how I want to make it. Like, to me, that's almost like, and not answer to people, not answer to bosses. Like, to me, that's the biggest driver, right? Because like, I really value independence. I really value freedom. And like, I put that on top of money. I like the financial, a good financial and money, right? Like,
Of
who
course.
doesn't? But I think you have to prioritize. And if you always let money be the top priority, that could really align you with the wrong kind of goals in the long run. Right. I'm not saying it's not an important aspect, because, like, I've always supported myself as I went for my goals. And I think that's a big thing that people don't realize, is like, younger entrepreneurs will, complain and like be at their parents' house trying to run a business, calling themselves an entrepreneur on their Instagram profile, but they're mooching off their parents in order to achieve their goal. And I just don't think that's the right way to do it. Right. I always was like, no, like, it's not bad to get help from your parents. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, don't mooch off other people to reach your dreams. Right.
Mm.
I kind of probably went away from the question a little bit, but
No.
hopefully.
Yeah, no. It definitely makes sense. I mean, I think it's a tough space. It's, well, not tough, but it's interesting because you're like, I've seen, like you said, your driver, right? What you loved was freedom. So it didn't matter what it looked like for you, as long as you got to the end goal.
The niche didn't matter. See, like in e-commerce, and a lot of people you want to enjoy what you like in your selling, right? I mean, but at the same time, that's never the number one priority for me. It's like, can I build a business that's competitive in this niche? Can I sell products in this niche with the good offers? And that was the number one priority. And like, people, like, for a long time, were like, made fun of me. They're almost like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm in like the crystal business. And or whatever. They just think it's like so funny. But at the same time, like, do you love crystals? And I'm like, no, not really. Like,
Right.
they're cool. Like, I do think they're cool. They're useful. And they help people in their lives in different ways, but they're not like my passion. And I think that's what people confuse, right? My passion is more like business, e-commerce, like digital marketing, and like making money. Like ultimately at the end of the day, it's about running a profitable business and doing what you enjoy. But those two are not independent necessarily, right? I think there's a balance between the two, because if you just do what you love and there's no market for it, then like what's the point?
Mhm. Absolutely. Okay, no, that, and again, I think that's I wanted to ask because I think that there's an important space to understand, because like you said, you being in the crystal business at the time, and that was, the seven-figure business that you had at the time that you sold.
Mhm.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, but again, you didn't have a love for that. I think it was just like you said, the joy of running a business, having, different, products, employees, whatever that looked like for you, like that was the part you enjoyed more so than the
Yeah, I
actual
think
thing.
so. Yeah, just the part of building something from scratch, from the ground up, watching it profit, watching you be able to like, again, the ultimate goal was freedom. So obtaining that, and then everything else was kind of more a bonus, more or less. Like I took a huge pay cut going full e-commerce from corporate, right? And like that was mostly because I was like, I'm okay with that in the short run to offset my um, my time, right? Because I always, when I went full time e-commerce, that's when things started to change, because that's when you really see your business take off. You go full time in anything, your focus is where things manifest, right? And so that was a huge step for me, and be able to do that. And like then things are very real. Once you're full time in something, as you probably have seen too, right? Just manifest and grows.
What made you comfortable leaving um corporate America to go full time? Did you hit, like, were you waiting for a certain income that you made per month or per year, then said, okay, even though I'm taking a pay cut, I can survive off of this? Like, what made that transition for you?
Well, in all honesty, like this last job I was at, it was a corporate job for about a year and a half. And the whole company had changed a little bit. And it was in media. So I was learning about digital marketing. And that was nice, because I was understanding at an agency level how digital marketing was run. And it was helping me kind of learn the foundational steps. So I always recommend that, right? If, um, or maybe just working as a freelancer, whatever it might be, just to get that initial experience. But then I think that transitioned, and I was unfortunately was let go in that position. And at that time, I had built up enough experience in e-commerce, because I was in the e-commerce space, nothing successful, but from that point, a couple years. So I had run my first business, had sold that one, and I've been in digital marketing. So I had a better understanding of the foundations and what was going on. And then I was able to kind of bounce off that, right? But it was scary, because initially I didn't like, when I was let go of that job, I didn't have e-commerce income coming in. So I always recommend, after that first experience of just quitting a corporate job without income, not to do that. But at this point, I didn't have an option.
Forced your
Um,
hand.
Yeah, so it actually put me in a position where I was like, no, I'm full-time ecom. I think it's that mindset shift. Whatever makes that you do it, whether you let go or you do that by yourself, like you have to have that mindset shift of like, this is what my main source of income is going to be, and really believe that and work on it until it happens, because it's just that momentum. But yeah, it's hard if you don't have something else coming in. It's hard because, like you said, it takes resources, and it takes money, time to build a business, right?
What so to realistically, just for number purposes, based on industry standards, in order for you to sell a business for seven figures, what does it have to do annually on average for it to be worth someone to spend seven figures on, for an investment for it?
That's a good question. And it comes down to it. There's a lot of different variables that go in place, right? So if like a standard drop shipping business that maybe you only have one channel like Facebook that's driving most of the traffic to your store, and so it's not diversified, the traffic, maybe it's only a year old, and you're drop shipping. So like the business is then analyzed on that foundational aspect. And maybe you'll only just get a 1x annual profit instead of like a business that had recurring revenue, like a subscription business. Maybe we'll get a 4x annual profit on the sale. So that's a big range, right? 1x to 4x on a sale. That's 4 times the difference. So now I'm really trying to build that in mind, right? It's like, how can I build a business where I can get now a 4x valuation instead of like a 1x where, yeah, because you put a lot of work into this business. You want to be able to maximize the sale of the business because that's a lot of your profit, where it's going to come from, right? And so I would say that's kind of the foundation. Is like it all depends, but it can range from anywhere from like 1x to 10x, just depending on the business model. But if you're just running and operating a standard e-commerce business with no recurring revenue, then you might only get a 1 to 2x. So maybe if you're doing 200K a year in sale and profit, you might be doing like 800 to a million in sales because the average e-commerce business is running at like a 20 to 30% operating margin on profit.
It's good to know, guys.
Right.
Okay.
And so like these are just some base numbers, right? And then also, if you want some more numbers, just to think about how much goes in like to advertising spend, right? So I think to get that $1 million in revenue, I spent around 500,000 in ad spend, right? So my return there is 2 to 1. But these are the things you have to realize. Your biggest expenses are your advertising and your product costs in e-commerce. Right. So a lot of people don't realize this when they're starting this type of business, that there's going to be a lot of investment back into advertising, back into product cost, making the product better for inventory. Eventually, once you get to that level, I mean, if you're drop shipping, you don't necessarily need to order inventory, but you want to get out of that model quickly because the whole goal is to make your customer as happy as possible at the end of the day. That's how you build a successful brand. Right. I mean, the foundations need to be there. The people, the customers need to be happy with the product or service you're providing. Without that, the whole business, like there's no sustainability in a business. And so it always comes back to that. And so you can run a poorly run business for a little bit, but like I said, it's going to just collapse eventually.
Okay. So ideally, to get the greatest ROI, when you're selling a business, you want to have some kind of recurring revenue, like a subscription-based model of some sort that I guess shows almost not necessarily guaranteed money, but ultimately like, hey, every month I expect to generate this much money based on the subscription.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessary, but you can make money in business without doing that. But yes, I did have a recurring subscription part in my last business, and I'm really happy I did, because on months where like my ads didn't perform well or there was like a hiccup in the business, like I did have the recurring revenue to kind of help pad those hard times. And so it's good for that. And also, yes, when you're evaluating a business for evaluation, yes, that is a prime kind of thing to look at, a variable to look at, is whether there's recurring revenue in the business. And so now I always try to build it out with recurring revenue. So it's like, how can I provide value on a monthly basis? And someone starting out in e-commerce might not want to go out in that direction because it is more complicated, right? There's more management. There's like, if someone was just to start e-commerce, I would say just focus on the fundamentals first, right? Because this is more a business model. Focus on customer acquisition and how you can become a better marketer to acquire customers, because you can use that in any business. Right.
Okay. So success in the e-commerce space, created obviously, a 7-figure business in sales. You're also in the Bitcoin space as well, right? And I want to speak on that because for years, actually probably a year ago at this time, maybe about 10 months ago at this time, like obviously there was, prior to this Bitcoin rise, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin had its hype. I want to say maybe 2017 when it went on a run to like 18, 19K and then dropped. And I think once it dropped, people forgot about it. Nobody spoke about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Happens every bull run, usually.
yeah,
It's a
right.
4 year cycle. Yeah.
So yeah, now that you said that. So now you're a big we've been speaking about Bitcoin pretty heavily over the last at least a year now, about a year now. And first of all, when did you first get into Bitcoin?
So yeah, I first got into Bitcoin in like 2015. I first learned about it, and I think that's when I bought my first like two Bitcoin. At that time, the price was like I believe $250 a Bitcoin, and compared to now where it's around give or take 50K. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I sold those coins a month later at a $10 profit. Like holding them now, and they'd be worth more than 100K.
I know.
Right. So I learned my lesson there. But anyways, I stopped. I wasn't part of the 2017 bull run and didn't own any Bitcoin during that time. But like after that bull run, it made me start like learning more about Bitcoin. I was like, I want to get back interested in this technology. And like, I missed out on this whole bull run from just me being kind of naive and stupid. I could have turned that 500 into 40K a couple years later if I didn't sell. So I was like, I gotta research this again. So that's how I initially got into it.
Mm.
But I wasn't serious about it until early 2018 is when I really started to like deep dive into the crypto space and Bitcoin in particularly.
Okay. What at in 2018, around what was it the price point at that time?
So
Do you
it
remember?
just it had gone up to like you said 18, 19K
Okay.
in the December of 2017, and then it came back down to around 3K at its bottom. So it on average, Bitcoin in its last three cycles has retraced around 85% during a bear run, a bear market. So this is after its peak. It's gone back down and retraced around 85%. And so that's why people call it a super volatile asset. Well, it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean risky. And that's what a lot of people confuse volatility and risk of something. So we can hop more into that, but that's just kind of a little bit of detail about how I got into it.
Okay. So now let's get a little deeper into this because I remember we spoke and you've been pretty passionate. You've read a lot on Bitcoin, read up a lot about it. So what as you started, I'm sure as you started to invest into it, it started, it went on its bear run. I'm assuming you didn't get in from all the way at the bottom, assuming it kind of, had this volatility. Um, what made you so confident to say, I'm still going to invest money, a lot of, a good amount of your net worth into Bitcoin? Like, why are you so like? What made you so confident to the point where you said, "Hey, I'm going to"? I feel like it's almost like a live and die by Bitcoin. In terms of when it comes to like value and money and coins. Like,
Yeah. Well, I
where's
just
it?
think, yeah, I think it goes back to just fundamentally understanding Bitcoin. And that's really hard for most people. It takes, at least I'd say 20 hours of education to even get a baseline understanding of money because Bitcoin goes into money, economics, history of finance, and so many different deep topics where you have to kind of get a little bit of each to like, again, understand the network and how Bitcoin is a better store of value than anything out there, right? Because that's what it's designed to do. I mean, Bitcoin is a decentralized, permissionless network that lives on the internet that stores value over space and time. And it's a revolutionary technology that was invented in 2010 by Satoshi Nakamoto, and since then has become $1 trillion asset. And even so, we're still at a 2% adoption rate worldwide. So what I'm looking at is like Bitcoin in the next like 5, 10 years, kind of eating up to a 10% adoption rate worldwide. And maybe that's like one every 8 billion people. But at that point, the market cap is going to be much, much bigger than it is right now. but it's growing at a faster rate than the internet was in 1998. And that's kind of where we at with Bitcoin, where we're seeing just user adoption explode. And primarily it's helping people across the world in these countries that are really, unfortunately, their governments are taking away their wealth through inflation and printing of money, which we're seeing here, of course, but not to the extreme of like Zimbabwe or Venezuela or a country like that, where they're seeing hyperinflation situations. But it gives people the option to put their wealth into something that's going to be protected by the Bitcoin network. So that person in Venezuela has the same rights on the Bitcoin network as that guy in New York, that hedge fund manager. So it gives everyone around the world the same rights to the Bitcoin network and be able to store value in a decentralized fashion where nobody can actually take your property. And that's never happened in the history of the world, right?
And there are some risk involved, obviously. So I want to also I also want you to kind of explain the space of like the wallet and the keys, and if you lose those, you like
Sure.
can you kind of go through that space for the people who are unfamiliar?
Yeah. So there's a lot of technical aspects of Bitcoin, but yeah, I mean, just to start off, like Bitcoin gives you private property rights. I think you have to understand that first, right? And that's the ability to take your private keys, which these are your keys to your Bitcoin. So these are keys you set up when you set up a wallet, right? Such as a Trezor or a Nano, these external wallets, we call them, where you then set up a seed phrase, and this 24 seed phrase basically protects all your funds. So there's a definitely a degree of personal responsibility that comes in when it comes to like securing your funds, because you have to think about it as basically taking your gold in a lock in your basement, right? And it's the same concept. You're going to be responsible for that gold the same way you're going to be responsible for your Bitcoin. It's in your house, it's in your jurisdiction. The thing is, gold has been taken away from citizens in history and confiscated, where you can't do that with Bitcoin. So it truly is the only asset that really grants private property rights to 8 billion people on the globe. And that's why it's revolutionary. Um, but yeah.
Do you think that because you said it's at a 2% adoption rate worldwide, have you noticed, or are you starting to utilize Bitcoin as far as for purchasing or sending money, or like is it there yet, or do you still think this is something that you just kind of sit and hold, or are you actually using it to transact?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like the narrative around Bitcoin right now is more of a store of value, right? And that's why we're seeing big institutions get in, or big companies such as Tesla. Like they're looking at it more as a store of value proposition, because we understand there's ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin to ever exist. We know the exact monetary schedule of when these Bitcoins will get released. So this is the only asset in the world where we actually know the true supply on the actual marketplace through the analysis of the blockchain on Bitcoin. We can audit every single coin on the network and know where it is. And essentially, um, this allows for um, a decentralized open protocol where anybody can use it. And yes, it's used for transactions like you were saying. We are seeing that pick up now in places um, like Venezuela, these places in South America, where they're using it now to transact on the Lightning Network, which is the layer 2 network of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin doesn't have on its base layer great sending capabilities, right? It is expensive on chain. That's one of the downsides of base layer Bitcoin, but that also comes with trade-offs too, right? And because Bitcoin is the biggest proof of work network in the world, that allows for it to be the most secure network in the world, right? And so there's always trade-offs of security, speed, and everything else. Everyone tries to come in and change Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is perfect how it is. And that's one of the most kind of amazing things about Bitcoin, is that nothing really needs to be changed on the base layer. They're just building out to help these countries, and now we can do transactions on the Bitcoin network, right? Before it wasn't really possible, but with Lightning Network, it's completely possible, and it's making that transactional layer really come to life, right? But I think for right now, it's more used as a store of value proposition, and that's kind of like the narrative right now. But that will change as Bitcoin increases, right? The growth.
So what do you think about these altcoins, these gimmick coins? The Dogecoin had a huge run early in the year, went from under a penny, shot up to 70 cents. Like, there's so many different coins that are kind of playing a factor coming into play now. One, what do you think about it? And two, does that alter or change things now that anyone can kind of create a coin? There's coins that are starting to have and hold value. Like, what makes Bitcoin so different that you believe in that, and maybe not another coin that started and within 10 years can be that?
No, it's a good question. I mean, there are thousands of different cryptocurrencies out there that you can choose from. So what makes Bitcoin special? I mean, a lot of people do ask this question, and it really comes down to the decentralization of Bitcoin. And most of these other projects, if not all of them, are centralized in some way or another. And when you actually go and deep dive into this fact, you realize, you come out from the other side, that Bitcoin's the only true proof of work currency that is truly decentralized. That's the whole point of cryptocurrency. We're trying to move away from a centralized system that we have right now with fiat currency and the US dollar, right? From them being able to print that as much as they want at any time by just adding a zero on the computer screen, to a system where everyone has the right to store their value without it being debased by a very small group of people, right? In our case, the Fed or the US government, being able to just debase currency whenever they want. And so, yeah, where was I going with that? The question, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. So the first part was what makes Bitcoin so different, and what do you believe about these other?
From altcoins. Okay, so yeah, it just goes back to the decentralization, because a lot of these other projects, even Ethereum, like, has its own marketing team. It's even rolled back its chain multiple times. If they don't like a transaction, they can roll it back. These are all qualities of a centralized institution or a centralized company, right? And at the end of the day, again, it goes back to, like, we're trying to get away from that system, and Bitcoin does exactly that. It's a truly permissionless, decentralized network where we verify. We don't trust anybody, and that's the beauty of it. Is that by verifying everything on the blockchain and by how Bitcoin works, I don't have to then worry about being able to store my value over time as something that's going to be debased, right? Like, mathematically, it's certain that the Bitcoin network is going to store value. I mean, that's just, there is risk, like you said, but in terms of the network doing what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to be the best long-term store of wealth value that's ever been created. It's synthetic gold, right? So it has all the properties of gold, but with all the properties that gold doesn't have, essentially, to make the most perfect money the world has ever seen, in terms of mathematical scarcity, of digital scarcity, and just being a protocol that's fully decentralized, which, that was being worked on well before Bitcoin, a digital e-cash, and these other different digital, they were trying to do that for a long time until Bitcoin, that problem had not been solved. And then Bitcoin solved a decentralized proof of work network. And so that's kind of where, that's kind of where it ends right there.
Is there a factor of uncertainty in the fact that it is digital, it is online? Like, for example, like when Y2K was a thing, and everyone was worried, viruses. how does that play into like Bitcoin, and what makes that safe? Because everything is hackable, right? So is there any concerns with that, or what kind of, is there any
So
protocols or stuff?
yeah, it's a good question. So like as the Bitcoin network gets bigger and bigger, the network gets more secure. I mean, that's the beauty of the Bitcoin network. So right now it's the most secure network by far in the entire world. It's never been hacked in 13 years. It's done its job and what it's supposed to do perfectly with a better uptime than all the tech companies, the big tech companies such as Apple, Google. So like it's running perfectly as how it should be on a protocol. It's also upgradable money. So like Bitcoin is always being improved. So as quantum computing improves in the future and as technology, like some people worry, like you're saying, just about the Bitcoin network potentially being hacked as technology gets better, quantum computing increases. But right now, that's so far away. If you just look at what's going on, and the whole world would be in a devastating place if that were to happen too. It just wouldn't be Bitcoin. It would be like the entire internet's run on encryption. So it would just be like the whole banking system that we currently have, like the internet, like Bitcoin would be obviously a concern if that happened. But like so far, SHA-256 encryption has not been broken. And Bitcoin, you know, Bitcoin has some security concerns in the future for that reason. But like, again, it comes back to like Bitcoin being the most secure network in the entire world because of its proof of work, because of its energy usage, because of all these different components in the Bitcoin network. That's what makes it secure. And that's what's most important when it comes to money, and a foundational money for society is security. Right? It's
Absolutely.
not about all these different bells and whistles and everything, like, and Bitcoin does that perfectly. It's foundational base layer money, and it operates that way perfectly, right? And what's beautiful about it is that we're building solutions on top of Bitcoin layer 2 with DeFi and Lightning. So all these things are coming into play, and it kind of makes these altcoins like, for a 5-year investment play, that was very, very risky. Like I'm an investor, so I'm looking more like 5 to 10 years down the line. And when I look at projects such as Ethereum or even like Cardano, yes, there's a chance they do succeed, but they are centralized and they do have a lot more risk when it comes to that investment. So I'm never the guy to say like, don't invest in altcoins. Like, do what you want to do. Like, I don't invest in altcoins myself. I invest in Bitcoin only, right? And I'm not giving financial advice here to anybody. But with that said, like, Bitcoin, I think, is like, takes a place in a portfolio where it's just the risk reward is kind of unmatched. And Bitcoin's already won. Like, that's what most people don't realize. Like, it's reached $1 trillion market cap. Its network effects are unmatched, and there's no competition. And so that I get to the point of like, yeah, this is the best risk reward on any bet that I could really see. Like, and it's hard for me to get past that, right? Like, I'm not saying don't diversify, but if you don't have any Bitcoin, you should really rethink about that statement.
It's funny. I read somewhere that it said Bitcoin will get so big that people will start to talk about Satoshis instead, right? Just because of how large it is. And for those who don't know, I think it's what, like a million, or is it 10 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin? How much
It's
is it?
100 million
100 millions.
for one Bitcoin, the visibility, right? And so that's what most people don't realize. Oh, I have to buy a Bitcoin. No, you don't. You can buy one Satoshi and still be part of the Bitcoin network. And that costs you, I mean, today to be a Satoshi millionaire costs you around $400. So you can have a million Satoshis. And again, if you look, just put a graph of the dollar and put it on the US dollar and put it on top of Bitcoin. And you can see, I mean, the dollar has been losing value ever since its inception, right? And slowly declining in value. And then Bitcoin, on the other hand, is gaining in value. So it's just taking a long term, like, again, and that's because dollars have unlimited amount of supply and Bitcoin is strictly limited to 21 million forever. No one can change that. That it will be stuck in Bitcoin protocol forever, right? And so it's just digital energy. If you think about Bitcoin as digital energy. I'm going to turn my fiat dollars, which is backed by nothing, into digital energy that's protected by a network that's decentralized, that no one can touch, that no one can manipulate, and that I know is immutable law forever. And so that's a system where I could sleep at night and go like, I can have predictability in what's going to happen rather than a system where it's unpredictable and I have a few people manipulating wealth at the top of um, the totem pole, right?
Mm. I have a few more questions, and I'll let you go. With Bitcoin, one of the things that you said to me, and I think it's fine to share this. You would advise, me, no financial advice. I take what you say seriously. At least have 0.28. I believe it was 0.28, like 28% of a coin at the time. And your wording, and I'm paraphrasing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was something to the effect of, having at least 28% of a coin will put you well ahead of X amount, because there's only going to be like 21 million coins ever that will ever be
So
in
it's
circulation.
that was like a simple mathematical problem. A lot of people in the Bitcoin community like the 0.28, which is equal to 28 million Satoshis, right? If you have 28 million Satoshis, you're mathematically guaranteed to be in the top 1% of Bitcoin holders, right? Just mathematically on a worldwide basis, if you split Bitcoin up equally between every individual on the planet, because there's only so much Bitcoin, and you take the 1%, you're going to be in the 0.28.
Oh, okay.
And so like that's a number. If you achieve that, it's like you're mathematically going to be in the top 1% of Bitcoin holders automatically, right? Like, because we know that more Bitcoin cannot be printed, and that's, it's defined scarcity. And that's what's beautiful about Bitcoin, because gold's not even like that. They both right now have about the same supply inflation rate, which is around 1.8% a year. But the thing with gold is, the more gold inflation goes up, which gold stays around 2%, but the more gold is found, the more gold's going to be mined in the supply. And the demand is goes up with supply, if that makes sense. So as we find more gold, more people, they're going to mine more gold, and the supply of gold is going to go up. For Bitcoin, that's not possible. Demand goes up. There's only so much Bitcoin that is mined every day. Right now, that's 900 Bitcoin per day. At the end of next halving period in 4 years, it's going to be cut. So 450 Bitcoin per day will be mined. Every 4 years, that gets cut in half. That's the halving event of Bitcoin. So like, so far, there's already been a total of like 18.6 million Bitcoin mined, and we have another 1.4 million to mine over the next 150 years, right? But most of the Bitcoin are on the market. And then a lot of Bitcoin haven't been touched for 10 years. And we can see that through on-chain analytics. So you know exactly how many holders are holding Bitcoin and when. So it opens up this whole new world of on-chain analytics, where it's the most open source asset that we've ever seen, where people can look at the analytics of this asset and what it's doing on chain, right? And see where these coins are moving, who's holding them. And it gives this whole new information about this asset class. Like we know how many users are coming onto the network daily or monthly, right? And so, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely an interesting space, and a space that that was, once you told me that, I said, man, I have to make that happen. So as it
yeah, I
goes.
recommend everyone learn more about it. Like, don't just dive in and take my word for it. Like, it took me, I say I've put in close to like 5,000 plus hours of Bitcoin knowledge, right? And it goes that deep, where you can go into just Bitcoin on humanity, Bitcoin on social issues, Bitcoin, like how money, literally base layer money, fixes a lot of the world's problems. And that's why I'm so passionate about Bitcoin. It's not about getting rich, or it's not about that. Like, when you dive deep enough into it, you realize that fixing base layer money fixes so many of our current problems and social issues that we have in today's world.
So two more questions. When you said Bitcoin on humanity, there's something that I thought about, and I want to know your thoughts on this because I think this is interesting. So Tesla was accepting Bitcoin for a little bit. I'm not sure if they're re-accepting it now again, but I know they stopped. Elon Musk stopped it because he said of the energy that it was producing, and what was your thoughts on that whole situation? Can you explain a little bit just so people are clear?
Yeah, I think it's tough when like a billionaire who has that much influence gets into the space, and like there was a lot of misinformation that he tweeted out during this kind of time. And one of Bitcoin's things is like Bitcoin doesn't need a hero, right? Like Bitcoin doesn't need a billionaire to come in and change it. Like and it can't. That's the great thing about Bitcoin. Like as much as someone wants to come in and control it or change it, it can't, because it's fully decentralized. The US government can't even do that, right? And so it comes back to just this energy FUD that's recycled over and over again. I mean, we've seen Bitcoin energy FUD for the last 10 years, and the same news gets recycled. And to the people that think Bitcoin takes too much energy up, is just like, I'm like, what I think Bitcoin, I want it to use as much energy as possible because it's doing good for the world, right? It's creating a new base layer of money that we've never had before. And that in itself will do so many wonderful things to the world, where like Bitcoin's using like 0.1% of the energy grid. That's fine. Let's raise it up to 0.2, 0.3. Like it's a ridiculous argument. It's saying like, why do you use a laundry machine in your house? Like you shouldn't do that. It uses energy, right? It uses a lot of energy. Well, yeah, it washes my clothes. Well, yeah, my Bitcoin stores my value and makes it the hardest money the world's ever seen. And, for me, that's energy is worth it. And so I think it's just a bad argument where it's just like, first of all, Bitcoin doesn't use a lot of energy. It does to an extent because that's proof of work, and the energy actually protects the network. That's what actually protects the Bitcoin network. But with that said, where a lot of the Bitcoin is being mined by renewable energy, we're already seeing places with waterfalls hooking up their waterfall, like El Salvador, and using volcanoes as energy to mine Bitcoin. So it's taking these countries that have been impoverished and tied to the US dollar and now giving them a way to escape this kind of off of their own energy that they would just go to waste anyways, right? So it's a beautiful thing. It's actually creating new ways of renewable energy. Like the whole energy argument is complete FUD. And I mean, look at Elon. He's in bed with US government subsidies. Like Tesla wouldn't be profitable without subsidies from the US government. So you look at a lot of these ties and you're like, and I just think Elon, at the end of the day, he does personally own Bitcoin, and so does Tesla. I mean, he's admitted that on a personal basis as well. So, he has to do what's best for Tesla. Tesla's a public company, and I think there's a couple people on that board that was like, "What the hell are you guys doing investing in Bitcoin?" I mean, there's still a big group of people that don't want Bitcoin to succeed, right? So you have to take all of that into account, I think.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it was interesting because obviously, I mean, not so much Bitcoin, but you can see, when he tweeted stuff like Dogecoin, went up and down, and the volatility.
He knows he can manipulate the market. Like this guy has a ton of power. So imagine like he goes to the options market, puts like it's unregulated Dogecoin, just put some money in and tweet, and you make some millions of dollars. I mean, the game's easy, man, at that point. And it's very easily manipulated. So like, I don't know if he's intentionally hurting people. I mean, I know his tweets, like something like Dogecoin is like, it just makes me smile because it's supposed to be like this meme currency. It was invented as a joke.
Yeah.
And it made me realize like money is all perception. Like if someone gives it value through perception, then it's going to have value no matter if this chain is secure, or like this is actually like, sustainable for the long run. It doesn't really matter. Like people value it now. They like dogs with memes. And, this has a great marketing behind it, and it's killed it. So I think it's sitting at like a 70, $80 billion market cap the last time I looked at it. And I would have never have guessed it would ever get to that point, right? At 1/10 the size of Bitcoin. But, like I think you're putting a lot more risk. Like if you want to own Dogecoin, go for it. But like when you understand how centralized and how the security risk of that chain and everything else that's involved, you wouldn't want to hold it. So that's why I say do your research, because people get so excited. They just go like, oh, like I'm going to log into Coinbase and buy like the top 10 coins. And like, it's easy to do. That's what they show you. You log into Robinhood, they have Dogecoin first. I mean, first of all, did you hear about Robinhood? Dogecoin's like, I think it was 60% of their total revenue.
Wow.
Dogecoin.
I believe that, considering with the hype. Yeah.
Yeah. So like these companies, these exchanges are making so much money off altcoins that they're going to promote them even if it's just unethical, right? And so that's the thing. You just have to do your own research. You can get really, I would say, just focus on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is such a tremendous opportunity in its own. It's a revolutionary technology. It's changing the world. It's growing faster than the internet. And like you can be blindsided by all these distractions. And it just, if you just focus on Bitcoin, dollar cost average, you would do better than all the hedge funds out there in the United States, right? But people get too, they want to diversify. They just can't focus on one thing. And I think that goes back to being an entrepreneur too. It's just like, being focused, just like staying course on whatever you're doing. Yeah, you can change and go different directions. But if you're always going after that next gold nugget, not gold nugget, but if you're going that next golden opportunity that's being waved at you with the next carrot, you're never going to really learn or get deep enough on anything. Same goes with Bitcoin, right?
That's true. Yeah, one of the things you said maybe like 2 minutes ago, which I thought was huge, which is definitely a gem, was you realized after Dogecoin, whatever it is, like grew, like it being a meme coin to what it is now. Like money is just perception, right? Money is going to be whatever you think it is, and that I was like, wow, that makes sense, right? Because something that literally, like you said, was a joke, right? It got a couple of TikTok hits and a couple people started tweeting about it, went from it being worth nothing, right, under a penny, to it, going up to, I don't know I have no idea what it is now, but again, right, like it's really perception, because there's very few places you can go and say, hey, I have this coin, let me purchase something, right? Like,
yeah. Exactly. And it makes it dangerous because like you see like Mark Cuban shilling Dogecoin, and then, he comes out publicly and says he owns like $450 worth. You're just like, dude, that's a joke. Like you're not even financially invested in this thing and you're shilling Dogecoin to the masses. I mean, that should tell people something, right? Like Mark Cuban has only $450 in Dogecoin.
Oh, I didn't even know he said that. Wow.
Hey, he personally said that. And so that's the problem. It's just like these guys have so much on their plate already. Like I don't expect them to understand Bitcoin at the depths that I do. I'm not saying I'm smarter than them by any means. I'm just saying, like, I put 5,000 hours of Bitcoin knowledge. Did they? I don't know. Like, so I don't always trust just what billionaires come out and say on Twitter. I mean, you have to be careful nowadays and understand like their inherent, like, what are they trying to achieve at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, man. That makes sense. Well, man, I don't want to hold up too much, man. You gave a lot of really good stuff in the e-com space that I'm, super grateful for, man. I appreciate all the knowledge that you've poured into me in both subjects, but definitely the e-com. Yeah, definitely the e-com space and even this Bitcoin, space where you can feel and you can tell the passion behind that, man. You can definitely, and again, it's the hours you put in, 5,000 plus hours. I think.
Well, there's two sides of the equation, right? It's just like you need to think about that income generating side. You can't own Bitcoin if you don't have any assets to invest in Bitcoin, right? But when you get to that point where you have some assets to invest, you need to be able to store your wealth the best possible way, whether that's real estate, stocks, like that's a decision you're going to have to make. right? But I wouldn't delist Bitcoin from just what the mainstream media says. Like, do your own homework, read your own books. That's my point. It's not financial advice by any means,
Of course.
but go do your hours, your 10 plus hours, and then make that choice for yourself. But there's two sides of the equation at the end of the day.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And you, as long as I always say, as long as you're comfortable living with the choice you make, then it doesn't matter. But no, definitely, there's a lot of, you can tell, or you can see basically the inception of Bitcoin, which is to like what it is now. I remember, and I'll say this really quick. I watched a show called The Blacklist, and back in maybe 2014, 2015, when I started watching it, these criminals, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with The Blacklist.
I haven't heard of it, no.
Okay, it's a phenomenal show that comes on NBC, but
Okay.
and it's about well, I won't get too deep, but it's a great show about a guy who is on the FBI's most wanted list. But anyway, he was in bed with a lot of different criminals, and they used to talk about things. And he says, "Hey, I sent this over to you in Bitcoin." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard it, again, this is 2015, they're sending money through Bitcoin. I never thought anything of it. And it's crazy now because this was he ran a criminal enterprise, and that's how they were sending money. And I'm guessing, now it's because like it wasn't really traceable at the time.
Yeah. That's the funny thing. It's funny you say that though, because actually Bitcoin is, you have to be a pretty dumb criminal to use Bitcoin nowadays, because your wallet address could be pretty easy. Everything's on the blockchain and transparent. So it's easy to retrace transactions. And if someone really wanted to find out who really was doing it, they could probably find out. So not the best crypto to use for privacy. But that's funny you say that. Yeah, because the US dollar is actually used as the most criminal enterprise fiat money to do criminal enterprise with, right, is the US dollar. So it's funny when people blame Bitcoin. Bitcoins can be used for good or for bad, right? Just like the internet,
Of course.
just like any tool. So it's funny how it's changed, but that narrative, they still will push that. Sometimes it's like the energy FUD. It's the same thing with kind of that topic as well. So
yeah, no, it's interesting. But no, I mean, I wish I definitely, I mean, don't we all, right? Hindsight's always 2020. Because in 2015, who knows? I have no idea what Bitcoin was then, but just thinking 2015 when I first heard it, and not even really understanding, and did a little research, what life would look like.
Yeah, true. But that's funny because everyone says at the current moment that they're late for Bitcoin. Even people back then that were buying at $250 were like, oh, damn, I'm late. It was $10 like a few years ago. So like, that's just the thing with Bitcoin. It will punish the people that continue to wait. And you deserve Bitcoin when you deserve it, because you've obviously done enough research to where you feel comfortable buying it. But that's the thing. It's programmed to keep going up in terms of monetary units, because fiat's unlimited and there's only 21 million Bitcoin. So it comes down to a supply and demand math problem.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see. Do you have any? And you can answer this if you don't have to answer this if you want. Do you have any predictions of what you think by 2030, if you were to guess what Bitcoin would be at?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I follow the stock to flow model pretty closely. It's like his name's Plan B. He's an anonymous character online, but he essentially put out this model that's been 98% accurate since it's come out. And it's unbelievably accurate so far. And he's predicting this cycle, we get up to around 200 to 250K
per coin.
And then by 2025, we could hit $1 million. So not even by 2030, we hit the 7-figure point. It could be before then.
Wow.
And then into the 7 figures, because that 500K Bitcoin is at gold's market cap around $10 trillion. And Bitcoin is a lot better store of value than gold. So, a double on that, it's going to do exponentially more, but it's conservative. $1 million price point still pretty conservative for Bitcoin.
Wow. Okay. So this is something that long-term, 5, 10, 15, this essentially it, in your vantage point, right, is can almost be like a retirement piece for some, right? Especially considering the
Absolutely.
news where I
I
think it's
have
a
some. I have some in my
2034.
retirement account, as you mentioned
Yeah.
it,
Oh,
right?
really?
Because no, the longer the better. It's the best for longer term store values. If you're looking at Bitcoin under a 4-year timeline, it's very volatile. Like you said, it can drop 85%. It's done that. So, but no one's ever lost money in Bitcoin over 4 years. So like, it's always good to look longer, right? Like if you're going to let emotions get you, you're more of a trader. You're not an investor. If you're looking at, 1 to 3 year timeline, that's more of a short-term trade,
Mhm.
and it could really, put you in a bad position if you're not careful, right? Because of Bitcoin's volatility, it goes both ways. It goes down really quick, it can, but it can go up really quick. And if you zoom out, it's going up and to the right, right? And so when in doubt, zoom out on an asset class and you'll see the larger trend. But it could be very scary for people to see their wealth go down by 50% in fiat terms, right? You have to think about you're valuing Bitcoin never changes. If you have 0.28 Bitcoin, you will still have 2.28 Bitcoin at the end of the day if fiat drops, if the value of your Bitcoin in fiat drops 50%. But you have to understand that over a period of time, like there's a good chance Bitcoin's has always bailed out anyone that's bought the top. Bitcoin will always bail you out since now. Not financial advice, but we're seeing Bitcoin now at 50K, and people think this is late. But just imagine when Bitcoin's 500K, that's another 10x from here, and people are going to think they're too late, and then Bitcoin goes up, another 5x from there. So it's just like it's that cycle is like you don't even if you have a small percent of your wealth, 1 to 3%, maybe just to start out to dabble in Bitcoin, learn more about it. I never went all in on Bitcoin like from the start, but if you go into Bitcoin, learn more about it. Like buy $20 worth. Maybe you're going to be more interested in the asset. You're going to learn how to use it on a wallet, and then that will open you into deeper knowledge, and then you're going to want to invest more. Like that's just naturally how it works. Or that portion that you invested is now worth 20% of your portfolio because it's now 4 years ahead and Bitcoin's 5x, right?
Do you think that because I heard you say, maybe I didn't hear you said you also have some Bitcoin in your retirement account? Is that what you said? Is that
Yeah,
like
so there's ways to go about that. If you do, I think it's just best to hold Bitcoin in cold storage, dollar cost average, preferably multi-sig wallet like Casa, like we've talked about. But just keep dollar cost averaging in Bitcoin. Don't look at the price. Buy it once a week, once a month, whatever is comfortable with you, with your budget. And over time, you're going to dollar cost average into this asset that's returning 200% a year compounded annually over the last 12 years. And, the price doesn't matter short term. So like, just stay focused on your income producing activities and don't get too focused on Bitcoin, right? I think that's
mm,
the
mm,
best advice. Let Bitcoin do what it
and
was invented to do. It was invented to store your value so you don't have to think about storing your value. You put time and effort into what you want to spend your time with during the day. That's Bitcoin's supposed to free you from that
mm.
knowledge, which is going to make a more prosperous you and have more time to do what you want to do in life, right?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Man, that was great, man. I definitely appreciate that. I got a
No
ton
problem, man.
a ton of information
I
and
enjoyed it too. It
knowledge
was good.
from that. So thank you so much for that. Before I let you go, you have any last words, and also where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, last words, I would just say, like, if you guys are interested more in Bitcoin, if you want to read the Bitcoin Standard, I always recommend that to people as a foundational book, by Safe Dean. And where to find me. I mean, if you really want to find me, I don't have any like programs or anything, so I'm not promoting anything, but you can go find me on Instagram, Hennessey 89, or, message me there if you really want to get in contact. But yeah, man, that's about it.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate it, man. One of the again, uh I know if anyone, who listens and wants to chop it up with you, if you're watching the video on YouTube, your IG handle will be down below. So that's great. And if you aren't watching it, it's Hennessey 89, HENNESSEY 89, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I just wanted to make sure they had that. Man, I appreciate it, Evan. Thank you so much for that.
My
Again,
pleasure.
wealth of
Yeah.
knowledge gained and man, I'm extremely excited to just to continue to learn up, not just in the Bitcoin space, but just even in the e-com space. And best of luck to
Thanks,
it.
man. We learn from each other. We're both like-minded entrepreneurs, and we can always share a lot of good value between each other. So I appreciate it.
Definitely, man. Definitely, man. As usual, guys. Again, thank you, Evan, for being here. I love you.